Yo, what's up guys, it's Offbeat here, back with another episode of Behind the Bars. This week I'm talking about my latest track, Same Old. So as usual, I want to say big up to everyone who's left a comment and liked the video so far. There's loads of you actually saying this is your favourite track on the album, which I'm kind of surprised about because it's slower and darker than usual. But thank you all very much, you know who you are, and big up. So Same Old is like a spooky horror tale about a town and where everyone who lives there gets older quicker. And it's basically a metaphor for how I think people change as they get older and how some people sort of get older mentally and other people stay young at heart. And there's a quote by Benjamin Franklin which says, most people die at 25 but some don't get buried until they're 75. And I think that quote perfectly summarises exactly what this song is about. So as usual, this track is inspired by real life events and basically about a little town that I grew up in the countryside called Cirencester. So what I noticed was that after we all kind of finished school and college and everyone went their separate ways, some people went on to university or just moved, other people stayed there, and the people who stayed there literally seemed to get older more quickly. Like they physically looked like they aged more, but it was more about like their mindset and the way they kind of behaved, and they sort of settled down, but it wasn't so much the fact they settled down, it was like things like their behaviours changed. So they'd go to the pub and they'd like have their own seat in the pub and like have flat caps, and it was literally like they were old men even though they were the same age as me and my mates who'd moved. And even like down to their mannerisms and the way they spoke and just everything about them just felt older before their time. And I think that is symptomatic of the countryside versus the city. And actually it's probably more in line with how people used to age in the past because people did settle down earlier and get married earlier. And it's only fairly recently that people have sort of stayed younger longer, stayed single for longer, moved around to have different careers and that sort of thing. And I think that fundamentally is the difference between growing up in the city and growing up in the country. So there's two different things going on in this track. You've got the message, which is, you know, people aging at different speeds depending on what kind of lifestyle they have. And then there's the actual like story itself and the vibe and the theme. And that's been heavily inspired by lots of different things, but two things in particular. One of them is a book called The Thief of Always by Clive Barker. And Clive Barker is an author who's written loads of horror novels, which have turned into like famous movies. So Hellraiser is one of them, and Candyman as well. But this book, The Thief of Always, is actually a kid's book, and it tells the story about a kid who goes to this like magical house where everything's amazing, and it's like you get all 4 seasons in one day, and it's Christmas every evening, and everything seems perfect. And then after a while, he starts to notice that everything isn't as it seems. So he stays there for about a month, and when he goes back home, he realizes that for every day he's spent in that house, a year has passed in real life. So he gets home and everyone's aged like 30 years. So I read that book when I was a kid, and that had quite a profound effect on me. I really remember that and being kind of like affected by that. So that's definitely one of the influences. And the other one is a TV show I used to watch when I was a kid called Erie, Indiana, which was about 2 kids who lived in this suburban town in America, and everything seemed normal on the surface. It was like this sleepy little suburban town, but then all this weird stuff happens. So for example, like Bigfoot would go through their rubbish. There was an episode where like there was a woman who kept her kids in these giant Tupperware containers to make sure they stayed younger. And that whole idea of things seeming normal on the surface, but then actually being like weirder and creepier once you dug a little deeper, that's something that stuck with me as well. And that's definitely been an influence in this song as well. So there aren't really any like standout lyrics in this one for me, unusually, because it's more about the story as a whole. There aren't any like witty little one-liners or anything like that. But if I had to pick one, it would be,
I'd always ask them how things were going, and the answer that they gave would be my way of knowing whether or not the town had managed to take hold, because if it had, the response would be same old.
And the reason I like that one is because there's loads of books and films and stuff like that where you don't find out the reason why it's called what it's called until like halfway through, until a point in the story. And then when you get to that bit, you're like, that's why it's called that. And so this is kind of the equivalent of that in this song. Like you don't really know why the song's called Same Old until you get to that line. So I like it from that point of view, but also I like the fact that there's like a kind of like a double meaning to it as well, because obviously same old can mean just same as usual, nothing's changed, but also if there was like a comma in it, it's like saying same, old, you know, like we're the same, we're old. So like I say, I've kind of been surprised by how many people have said that this is their favourite one on the album, and I've always wanted to do like a couple of sequels to this track, because I sort of want to do like a trilogy of this story, but it's not something I've really pursued because, like I say, I didn't think this one would be especially popular, but the fact that it has been makes me want to do it more. So is that something that you'd want to see? And if so, let me know. Cool, so that's pretty much it for this episode of Behind the Bars. Let me know what you think. Is this something that you've experienced yourself? Have you felt people around you like getting older quicker? Or did you just think this was like a fun, spooky story? And I'll be back next week for my next song, which is called The Talk. And it's another like more serious one, although that's more kind of like emotional. And then after that, we can start getting back into like the more fun comedy stuff. So thanks very much for watching. I look forward to seeing your comments and I'll catch you soon. Peace.